The world of the 21st century is going to be a world that will be divided between water-rich and water-poor areas. And already we're seeing this. At the very beginning of the century, 1/3 of the world's population was faced with water shortages and a lack of access to fresh water sources. What we're seeing is that by the year 2025, 2/3 of the world's population will be faced with not having access to fresh water sources. On top of this, the demand for water is doubling every 20 years. That's twice the rate of population growth. And if it continues like this, we will find ourselves depleting much of the world's water sources. Water scientists are telling us right now that by the year 2025, 56% of the demand for water will be rising at a level of 56% beyond that of water supply. So water demand will outstrip water supply by 56% by the year 2025. Canada is one of the water-rich areas in the world. In fact, it's worth looking at where the water richness really exists and then looking at where water poverty exists. But in terms of the world itself, the richest place on the planet as far as water is concerned is Brazil, followed by Russia, followed by Canada and the United States and China, believe it or not. So those are the countries that are supposedly water rich in the sense of having water sources that are relatively fresh and accessible. The problem, of course, is that many other countries, I mean, you can't really combine China in that because China is faced with all sorts of industrial shakeup and development that is poisoning their water system and is making it very difficult for people to have access to fresh water sources. The different parts of the world that are really faced with real problems are Africa. Most of the African nations are faced with serious water problems and shortages. Parts of Asia, particularly India and other countries like that, are faced with serious water shortages. Other parts of Latin America, besides Brazil, are also faced with water shortages. So right around the world there are pockets. The United States is a major problem right now in terms of water. If you look at the United States, and this is where the demand upon Canada's fresh water sources comes into being, because in the southwest of the United States is drying up. It's faced with some serious water shortages. Same with the Midwest of the United States, which is the breadbasket, which produces most of the food for not only North America but elsewhere in the world. That is also a major problem. And the southeast part of the United States is facing major problems. So these problems are going to continue to intensify. As they intensify, there will be demand upon Canada in its freshwater sources. That doesn't mean to say that even though we are rich in water and fresh water, that we have a lot of accessible freshwater sources. We too are faced with the problem of the poisoning of groundwater systems and serious problems that could very well emerge in the future. But nevertheless, this is the way the world is broken up. I think the whole world is going to be redesigned. The mapping of the world is going to be redesigned. We're going to see maps which will feature what are water-rich areas and what are water-poor areas. And I think we're going to see that as a way of looking at the world in the 21st century.
What can you tell us about the Canadian tar sands for the layperson?
Well, first of all, it is without a doubt the most. First of all, the Alberta tar sands are without a doubt the most destructive environmental project, environmentally speaking, the most destructive project on the face of this planet. And it is destructive for a variety of reasons. First and foremost, the environmental destruction that is taking place at the level of greenhouse gas emissions and carbon emissions. In order to get the bitumen out of the ground, there is the burning of greenhouse gas. Sorry, let me start over again. Okay, I'm sorry.
No worries.
It's a switch of topics, I guess. Okay.
Not a problem. Tell me what the layperson should know about Canada's tar sands.
Canada's tar sands are the most environmentally destructive industrial project of its kind on the planet. And when I say environmentally destructive, I mean, first of all, in an age of climate change, the tar sands is the fastest growing global warming machine that we have in the country. Because it burns so much natural gas in order to get the bitumen out of the ground, we end up burning 2.5 to 3 times as much carbon emissions and releasing those into the atmosphere as conventional oil production does. Secondly, we are doing it in a context where we are strip mining the boreal forests. And the boreal forests are nature's carbon sink. So we're getting rid of nature's carbon sink at the same time as we are taking that oil out of the ground and burning and creating those greenhouse gas emissions. On top of that, the tar sands is also poisoning the water systems in that region, and contributing a great deal to the depletion of water sources. And we're talking about one of the most precious freshwater systems on the planet, understood to be one of the top 3, is that whole area of the Mackenzie Delta, Mackenzie River system, and it's linked to the Peace River system and the Athabasca River system. That is one of the most precious freshwater systems in the world. Yet we are, on the one hand, poisoning it. Why are we poisoning it, or how are we poisoning it? Because of the enormous amounts of chemicals that are used for the extraction and the upgrading process and everything else of the bitumen, and trying to turn that bitumen into oil to be shipped elsewhere. And then secondly, because of forget it. I've forgotten what I was going to say there.
No problem. And how does the tar sands affect, populations in Canada or Indigenous people?
Can I just finish off the water part of it?
Oh, yeah,
And
sure. You got it? Sure.
Yeah, I've got it. It's just that at the same time, it is depleting large amounts of fresh water in that area. And the reason that it's depleting the fresh water is that somewhere between 2 and 5 barrels of water are used to produce every barrel of oil that comes out of the ground. And so we are using a great deal of water through the production process to generate the oil in the first place. So this is a real serious impact upon water, both in terms of poisoning and contamination, and in terms of freshwater depletion.
You do like a sum up where it's,
yeah,
without going into each one, saying it does this, it does this, it does this, it does this.
Okay.
On top of this, it
yeah.
does that.
Do you want me to start with the general statement about it being the most environmentally
Yes.
destructive? Okay. The Alberta tar sands is the most environmentally destructive industrial project of its kind on the planet. It's the fastest growing global warming machine in Canada. It is generating 2 to 3 times as much greenhouse gas emissions and carbon emissions into the atmosphere as conventional oil production does. It is strip mining the boreal forests, which are nature's carbon sink, and the way in which nature deals with carbon and stores carbon. So we're ripping that apart and getting rid of that. And furthermore, we're polluting and contaminating the water systems, and this being one of the most precious freshwater systems to be found on the planet, and we're polluting and contaminating it to the point where it's causing cancer downstream, creating cancer problems downstream for First Nations and Indigenous peoples. And then on top of that, we are depleting the freshwater system simply because to produce that barrel of oil requires 2 to 5 barrels of water. When you look at the history of the tar sands, really when it goes back to the land grabs that took place in order to get access to it and taking it away from Indigenous peoples to the bringing in of the technology that was used to develop the tar sands, where first of all we started in governments to develop the technology through government scientists. Then that was handed over or taken over by the corporations. The corporations in the mid part of the 20th century were invited in to develop the tar sands, and from there it moved right into a whole era of being driven by private enterprise. And I think that the result has been that we have gone along with this, or at least certainly a lot of Canadians have gone along with this, thinking that this is just a real example of technological progress, and now here we are sitting on one of the world's largest deposits of underdeveloped oil in the world. And wouldn't it be great if we just became an energy superpower as a result?
Now, are there tar sands in other places in the world, or just Canada?
No, there are in other countries. Places like Venezuela have tar sands and oil sands as well. And but nothing comes close to the magnitude of the industrial project that's taking place in the Athabasca region.
How big is it?
It's
You could say the tar sands is.
Hmm?
If you could say the tar sands is.
The tar sands can generate roughly anywhere between 180 and 220 billion barrels of oil, but recent predictions show that it could go as high as 320 billion barrels of oil. Actually, what's in the tar sands right now is, if we take in the total amount of bitumen that underlies the sedimentary rock basin, we're looking at well over 1 trillion billion barrels of oil. The problem is that new technologies are going to have to be developed to get at some of that oil, some of that bitumen, and to be able to extract it. There was also at one point along the way in the mid 1900s, there was a plan to nuke the area, to just apply nuclear explosives and blow the whole sedimentary rock basin up, so that the bitumen would start to flow, and companies could get access to it, and have a free-flowing spring of bitumen and oil-laden bitumen for many, many, many decades to come.
That's crazy.
Well, the blueprint for that is with the United States Navy, and still is to this day.
Is there anything, or what would you want the layperson or the general public to know, if you could get them one bit of information?
About the Alberta tar sands?
Just in general, about everything we've talked about.
Well, I think Canadians need to realize that we that we really are sitting on the fastest growing global warming machine in the world right now with the Alberta tar sands, and we need to do something about that. And we need to recognize that our reputation internationally as being a people that were guardians of the environment has all but been shattered. And we need to wake up to that and realize that we have major responsibilities, and all the more so because we are so close to the Arctic, which is such a precious ecosystem. And that precious ecosystem is already in decline and in serious danger right now. And if the tar sands continues to expand and develop, we continue to strip mine the boreal forests, we're very close to heating up the tundra. As we heat up the tundra, then the release of methane gas into the atmosphere will have devastating consequences in terms of global warming.
If there's where do you find hope in this?
I find hope in a variety of sources. I mean, I see it pretty well every day. Awareness building going on. I'm working together with a great deal of. I'm working together with unions, trade unions, and with environmental groups and with social justice groups, trying to bring them together into a new alliance to bring about change in our economy. And I think that one of the sources of hope is to see that willingness to work together. At one time, I could easily count the number of years ago where there used to be major these people used to be at loggerheads with one another, workers against workers against environmentalists, and that kind of struggle was going on all the time. What I see happening is that people burying the hatchets and saying, look, what we're faced with is the future of the planet. We've got to do something about it, and that means fundamentally changing our economy. So let's start to get together. Let's start to roll up our sleeves and see if we can move in this direction. At the same time, that has its downsides in the sense that you may have a few enlightened people that see this, but we got a long ways to go to wake up constituencies of workers, people at large in the population about the need for this kind of transformation and change. But still the source of hope is there. Source of hope has been where I've been here in the last few days with small farmers and peasants from around the world who really have a solution to the global warming crisis, in the sense that industrial agriculture is one of the major causes of climate change and global warming, and yet these people have been struggling for many years with an alternative which has to do with sustainable agriculture and organic agriculture. That is a viable, proven alternative to industrial agriculture. So not only do we have to get rid of and start to dismantle the system of industrial agriculture, but we have a ready-made solution, and it comes from people in many of these communities who are small farmers and peasants, and who have lived the life out of the soil for many years and generations. This is the source of hope, I think, that's coming alive. I see the connectedness between the work that being present with the peasants and the farmers, and how they're trying to wrestle with these issues, seeing the link between what's happening to land and the soil on the one hand, linking that to the water issue on the other, linking that to greenhouse gas emissions into the atmosphere over here, and also linking it to what's happening in terms of forests. And bringing those four elements together into a process and seeing the wholeness of it, that's what gives me a source of hope. And it's coming from people that are looked upon by the elites that are running the show as here in Cancun and elsewhere, as if these people are the ignorant people who really don't know what's happening. These are the people who know what's going on with regards to climate change. They live it every day and they feel it every day, and that's what's happening.